Hey, what's going on, guys? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. This lesson is about the parent major scale. Okay, so this lesson is going to be divided into three parts. Number one, what is the parent major scale? Number two, how to determine the parent major scale. And number three, and most importantly, how this can actually be applied to your playing. Okay, so with that said, let's get started. Alright, so what is the parent major scale? Basically, the parent major scale is a term that is used when we're talking about modes, alright? And specifically for this lesson, we're talking about modes of the major scale. Alright, so if you don't know what modes are, or if you want a basically just a briefing into what that means, take a look at my other lesson called Intro to Modes, okay? I go very in depth as to exactly what modes are, what the modes of the major scale, how to determine them, and all that stuff. In this video, I assume that you have a certain level of understanding already about what modes are, okay? So, the parent major scale, basically, let's take our G major scale, for example. G major scale is going to be our parent major scale in this example. Alright, the notes of the G major scale are G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then it starts back over on G again. That's the G major scale. It's also known as the G Ionian mode. Okay. Now, if I were to take the second note of that and run through the scale, starting and ending on the second note, so instead of starting and ending on G, I'm now starting and ending on A, I would be left with a new scale or mode known as the A Dorian mode. Okay, so the A Dorian mode is A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Okay. Then, if I were to take the third note, start and end on that, I would be left with yet a different scale or mode, okay? So, if I were to start on the B, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, okay, that's your Phrygian mode, that's your B Phrygian. Alright, so, of all these, the parent major scale is G. G major is your parent major scale. So, if you find yourself in a situation where you're playing the B Phrygian mode, okay, and you wanted to know what the parent major scale was, the answer is G major, okay? Every single mode of the major scale, or every single mode, Aeolian, Locrian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, Lydian, no matter what mode you have, whatever mode you may be playing in, there's always a parent major scale to think back to, okay? So, there's 12 possible major scales, there's 12 possible major keys, so the purpose of this lesson is to allow you to figure out what the parent major scale is when you're playing some sort of a mode, okay? So that's just a quick introduction as to what what that means, okay? So now let's get on to how to determine what the parent major scale is. Okay, so in order to determine what the parent major scale is for modes, or whatever mode you happen to be playing in, there's going to be two things that you're going to need to know. Number one, you're going to need to know the intervals of the major scale, okay? And number two, you're going to have to simply remember which mode goes with which number, okay? Each mode is going to be equivalent to a number between 1 and 7, all right? And each number is going to apply to one of the modes. I'll explain that in a second. But anyway, the intervals of a major scale. Again, let's take our G major scale, for example. Take a look at it on the screen here. The intervals of that are, you have your root, then you have a whole step, which could be called a major second. Okay, then you have a major third. This is all in relation to the root, okay? So, between the root and the second, you have a major second. Between the root and the third, you have a major third. Okay, then you have a perfect fourth. Then you have a perfect fifth. Then you have a major sixth. Then you have a major seventh. Okay, and then back to the octave. Okay, so you have major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, root. Okay? Now applying each one of those intervals to a mode and giving each mode a number, you would be left with your Ionian mode is 1, your Dorian mode is 2, your Phrygian mode is 3, Lydian mode is 4, Mixolydian is 5, Aeolian is 6, and Locrian is 7. Okay, so in order to determine what your parent major scale is, you're going to need to memorize those numbers, and you're going to need to understand the intervals of the major scale. Alright, so how to determine. Basically what you're going to do is, say you're playing in, for the sake of example, the F Mixolydian mode, okay? F Mixolydian, the rhythm section determines that you should be playing F Mixolydian because they are playing an F7 chord. And as we talked about in the Mixolydian lesson, Mixolydian mode works well over dominant chords, okay? So there's a F dominant chord going on and you're playing the F Mixolydian mode over top of it. And you want to know what the parent major scale is. How do you determine that? Okay? Well, you know that Mixolydian equals 5. Therefore, F is the fifth of what? That would be your answer. Okay, so the way to do that is you locate your F. I like to locate my F on the A string. Okay, so here's an F here. That is the fifth of right here, which is B flat. Okay, so if you're playing F Mixolydian, F is the fifth of, just look at your fretboard and realize, okay, well that's a fifth away from B flat. Parent major scale is B flat. You could try another one. Let's take G Dorian. Okay, G Dorian. What is the parent major scale to G Dorian? Alright, well we know that Dorian is equivalent to 2. Our number is 2 for Dorian. So come up, find your G. Alright, you could either find your G here, you can find your G on the E string. It doesn't matter. Okay, so G. Okay, and that is a major second away from what? F. Therefore, our parent major scale is F major. Okay, we'll try one last one just for the sake of example. Let's say A Locrian. Okay, we're playing in A Locrian. That's what the rhythm section is telling us that we should be playing in. We're playing A Locrian and we want to know the parent major scale. Okay, so Locrian is 7. Alright, so that's a major seventh of what? Okay, so major seventh is always just one note away from the root. Alright, so if we know that we have A Locrian, your A is here. Okay, so that would be the major seventh of the note that's 1 fret higher, so B flat major would be our parent major scale. Alright, so as I said, this requires you to understand your intervals of your major scale. You need to know, the root, the major second, the major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, and major seventh, and then you just simply apply a number to each one of these modes. Ionian 1, Dorian 2, Phrygian 3, Lydian 4, Mixolydian 5, Aeolian 6, and Locrian 7, and then no matter which mode you happen to be playing, you can always reference it back to the parent major scale simply by just looking at the interval, okay? So hopefully if you're watching this video on modes, which is a somewhat of an advanced concept, that you know what a fifth is, and you know what a fourth is, and you know what a major second is, and you know what a major third is, okay? So if you don't understand all that stuff, take a look at some other lessons. In particular, take a look at the lesson on how scales and chords are built using formulas. Okay, that'll help give you some explanation to all this stuff. But I'm assuming that you understand all that stuff. That's why I'm going kind of quick with it. All right, so anyway, that's how to determine your parent major scale. Now the third part we're going to do is going to be how to actually apply this to your playing. Okay, so here what we have is a fretboard diagram of the G major scale spanned across the entire fretboard. Okay, so all the red dots that you see, they are all the note G, and all the black dots that you see are all the other notes that are contained within the G major scale. Alright, so this is just a bunch of different patterns. Alright, you can play these patterns any way you'd like, but it doesn't matter because this is all the notes of the G major scale. My favorite to play when someone tells me to just play a major scale is I like to do the 3-note per string pattern. So I start on the G here on the low E string, and I just play the 3-note per string pattern. Okay, but you can really start on any of the G, any of the red dots, and play through the notes, and it's going to be the G major scale. You can start on this G here. Okay, or you can start on this G here. Okay, or you can start here. Alright, it doesn't really matter. It's all the G major scale. And as an intermediate guitar player, one of the first tasks that you take on the guitar is to attempt to learn how to play within a key all up and down the neck. Alright? So, as an intermediate, you probably either know that you should know this, or you probably already do know this, okay? So, you know how to play within a key in either a major key or a minor key up and down the entire neck of the guitar, and you kind of know how all the patterns connect together, you know how everything flows together, and it's all just one thing. So once you know this set of patterns for a major key, you can do it in any major key, and you can also do it for any minor key because it's the same patterns, okay? So that's the big point here. So once you understand that for a major key, then you can also do the same exact thing for any of the other modes because the patterns are exactly the same. The only difference is the location of the tonic note, or the location of your, the note in which the tonality is revolved around. So, let's say that you're a master at this G major scale here, okay? You know how to do this like the back of your hand. Then, one day you come across a piece of, or a band, they're playing something, and they're playing something that their rhythm section is playing a B minor chord followed by a C major chord. And it's just looping those two chords over and over and over. Okay, so you may recognize that you're supposed to be playing B Phrygian over that. Alright, you may recognize that, and you may know the B Phrygian, and you may only know one pattern of it. Alright, maybe you know that, maybe you don't. But the point is, you don't really know the Phrygian, okay? You know the major scale, you know the minor scale, you've been doing that for years, but this mode stuff is new to you. You don't understand how to quite play the Phrygian mode. You might know one position of it, but how to shred and play over the entire fretboard using the Phrygian mode, you don't really know that. But you actually do, okay? Because all you have to do is you have to think back and just think back to your parent major scale, and then just play those patterns, alright? And then the only difference is you're going to be focusing on the note B within those patterns instead of the note G, and then you're free to just solo away all you want in this Phrygian mode. Okay? So as you can see on this diagram, first I'm going to do G. Here's your G major. Okay? Now I switch it to B Phrygian. Alright, you see how the notes remain unchanged. The patterns remain unchanged. The only difference was the highlighted note is now the note B, whereas when we're playing in the G major scale, the highlighted note is the note G. Okay, so how this can be applied to your playing, well, no matter what mode you're playing, it doesn't matter. If you're playing any of the modes of the major scale and you don't know how to do that mode, well, you can always take one extra step, refer back to your parent major scale, and then just think of it in those patterns or those terms, okay? So this example, B Phrygian, we're supposed to be playing B Phrygian here. What's the parent major scale? Well, what we learned in the last section, Phrygian is 3, okay? So B Phrygian, 3. B is the major third of what note? Okay, so here's B, major third of G. Okay, so we know our parent major scale is G Ionian, or G major. Alright, so our tonal center of this, all these patterns are B, but all the patterns we already know. We've already learned them over the years. We've spent many years learning how to solo up and down the neck within a key, okay? So that's how you would use the parent major scale to help you play in other modes, okay? It's simply just the pattern recognition of what you already know, and that's basically all there is to it. Okay, so we could try for one more example. Let's say we're left with something where the band's playing this, they're just kind of playing a D7 chord over and over. Or there's a section where they're just playing a D7 chord over and over, and you know that the Mixolydian works well over 7th chords, okay? So you're playing D Mixolydian. Alright, so the pattern, you may only know the one pattern of the D Mixolydian. Okay, but say you wanted to span this over the entire fretboard. How do you do that? Well, you think back to what your parent major scale is, and then you think in terms of those patterns if you want to, but you keep your tonality as the D, because we're in D Mixolydian. Alright, so Mixolydian is 5. Okay, so D is the 5th of what? Alright, well here's a D here. That's a 5th of G. Okay, so our parent major scale for D Mixolydian is G major. You already know all your patterns of G major. You can shred up and down the neck using the G major scale. You're very good at that. Therefore, you can do it for the D Mixolydian mode as well. Alright? So that is how to apply this stuff to your playing. Okay, so hopefully that was able to help you out and clear up some confusion that you may or may not have had, because I know that modes are a very confusing topic to a lot of people. I see this on guitar forums. People are constantly misunderstanding what modes are, how to use them. But even more importantly is no one wants to learn 6 entirely new scales, okay? You know, the major scale, the minor scale, even though they're the same thing, that's still a pretty big task, okay? It's not easy to learn how to play within a key up and down the entire neck of the guitar, and it's just a lot to remember. And then when you introduce these modes into the mix, the Mixolydian, the Lydian, the Phrygian, and all these other modes, it's just a ton of scales. You don't want to have to learn all that stuff, okay? But that's the whole purpose of this parent major scale stuff, because once you learn the major scale, you already know all 7 modes. The patterns are the same. You already know it. The only difference is where that tonic note is within those patterns, okay? And that's basically that. So, keeping in mind that we're talking about just modes of the major scale here. Now, you can take other scales and create its own modes. Like, you may have heard things like super Locrian before. Those other modes, they come from other scales that are not the major. You can create modes from the harmonic minor scale. You can create modes from the melodic minor scale. Okay, technically you can take any scale and create modes from that scale. But for the purposes of this right here, we're just talking about just the major scale, okay? Regular do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and it's 7 modes: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, okay? So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that was able to clear up some things for you. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. Thanks a lot.